Ladies and gentlemen, to Carmine's Arena, a cultural gourmet of information, if you will, a feast for your mind and soul. And now, without further delay, the man, the myth, the maestro, Carmine Arena.
Greetings and welcome once again to Carmine's Arena, site of contest and conflict, venue for and of resolution. Resolution in terms of focus, remedy, and commitment, both yours and mine, to the preservation, the propagation, and the celebration of Western civilization. In my last episode, we bestrode yesteryear's high roads, well nigh a la mode, citing my mom and pop as some important life-defining crossroads which without memory time would fast erode. For yesterday's forgotten vices have become today's misbegotten fashion. Fashion placing fallacies, assumptions on overload. Fallacies which require an old man like me to become a timely, otic, yet loving goad, lest tomorrow and its tomorrows be overshadowed. My harvest poorly winnowed, and I then seen and perceived to be naught but a scold. Perhaps my wisdom bereft, left to be unscrolled. You then in blindfolds suffering the theft of the unconsoled. Thus memory is evocatory, ever our very own allegory to inventory. Yes, a valedictory remembered, ne'er dismembered of a glory better sensed, foretold, tenfold, not past tensed, as merely old. Now tag along as I folk-song my school days, those dear old golden ruled byways. Each morning, Monday through Friday, after pledging allegiance, we in class first thing continued to stand silently, to hear over the public address system the school principal's morning choice of a passage from the Old Testament. Mind you, this was public, not parochial school, not a church, mosque, nor shul. This routine preserved a mental hygiene swept clean of mean and scream and everything out of control in between. It reminded us tweens and teens that listening silently was indeed possible, and there was something out there greater than our overweened self. But now ACLU, stealth doth sidlewise and proscribe spiritual enterprise as constitutionally anathematized, divinity de-emphasized, in fact, demonized. What these ACL eunuchs overprescribe are today's endless alibis behind which to backslide. School stabbings and shootings, bullyings go hot-footing right up to summertide, along for the need of not God but uniformed security guards meanwhile. As we, using today's fashion, squander prosperity and freedom to morality's deformity, and again brings us back to ACL eunuchs' self-pity, a legally licentious fraternity teamed for man's tamed uniformity. Western civilization's infirmity, failing from pedophagging depravity. ACL unionized infamy suffering from diseased, legalized, appealed for evermore sleaze. Now let us speak about our well-spent school days' energies. I herein quote a Chris Kilham, whose words take me happily back to keynote for anecdotal anecdote, this important footnote. When I went to school, goes this quote, my friends and I spent our childhoods running around, playing games, playing sports, bicycling, running, climbing trees, making innocent mischief, and walking all over the place. It was fun. We were skinny and toned and full of energy. Sports and nutrition had a big national presence, and we were exhorted to maintain good health through regular exercise. Today, many schools eliminate physical education classes and cut down on recess time, whereas I can remember a time when we had phys ed classes at least 3 days a week, recess outdoors twice daily, and lots of after-school sports programs to join. Unquote. And yes, and yet, learning then was far more meaty, grated sirloin. Now we've spawned fat, forever texting brats who thumb rat-a-tat, unhappy and scrappy. No longer yesteryear's acrobat snappy, yet ever ready to take a nappy, then waking up cranky and unhappy. ACL yoo-hoo sappy. Schoolboys treated as misbehaving girls. Girls drum-beaten into sweet-meated boys. Tomboy alloys. Feminism's busboys. Give me an O. Give me a Y. Give me an Oi. So would say my Yiddish grandma, just to annoy gender messed up killjoys. Do yourselves a favor and read Camille Paglia, whose fast-paced intellect arrives in convoys to destroy misplaced feminist attitudes lacking Paglia's aptitudes, which quickly fills their void. Media-savvy Paglia is a veteran feminist herself, but not of the conformist variety, best described as tabloid, celluloid, alarmist droids. No, Camille Paglia, a multi-interdisciplined university professor, is a cerebral, well-tempered realist, particularly with regard to the blatantly respective differences between male and female, absent their current de facto plagiarists. Allow me to quote some of her fem gems. If civilization, she said, had been left in female hands, we would still be living in grass huts. Here's another grand slam. Leaving sex to the feminist is like letting your dog vacation at the taxidermist. Paglia, a self-declared natural warrior and a lesbian who dislikes lesbians, has some political observations well worth quoting and doting on. For example, the airheads of Congress, she said, will keep their own plush health care plan. It's the rest of us guinea pigs who will be thrown to the wolves. So much for Obamacare becomes snare, other witch-wise declared in frou-frou fanfare. Allow me to again quote the good lady Camille. She said, "Capitalism has its weaknesses, but it is capitalism that ended the stranglehold of the hereditary aristocracies, raised the standard of our living for most of the world, and enabled the emancipation of women." There. That is a solid answer to feminist, left-leaning, pinko-cum-communist secularists. In short, Paglia, who as the valedictorian at her yesteryear peer graduation, is yet of a mind to be reflective, not group-think retentive. Small wonder that she regards Gloria Steinem as the Stalin of the woman's movement, a Stalin ready-made for mannequins, who actively strives to keep Camille in Inglorious Gloria's well-built stratagem margins, her Steinem margins. One lipstick Stalin who's become femininity's exorcist, making empty heads spin, 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 with loads of din, din, and more din, unto creep in ruin, ruin, and more ruin. Civilization's Mandarin hobgoblin who goes on a-throbbing. Read up on Paglia, a feminist who subtracts from feminism what Lady Gaga adds to frigidity. In fact, read what becomes of Lady Gaga in The Eagle Eye of Palya. It makes for a current cultural saga of Gaga's sincerity made apocrypha, from staged alpha to waged omega. Big money, the mantra. Excuse me. Now, though I don't agree with Palya's every screed, she definitely requires that you be of disdain prepared, if with her you deign to disagree. Her speaking pace has the tempo prestissimo, only because her thinking embraces a supersonic velocity, ever more accelerando than her parlando. Any of your mumbo-jumbo will immediately beget her veto. Now let us turn to our president, who I suspect sees yesteryear as a time without cheer, and so presses the political buttons to glutton and engineer political jargon best suited to lambs become mutton. A listener sent this piece to yours truly. It is entitled A Bump in the Road. You might remember that callous statement uttered by our commander-in-chief when referring to the Benghazi terror killings. Yes, he called it a bump in the road. I wonder how that statement might fit on the tombstones of the fallen, whose loss doesn't politically prosper the snit of our White House boss, nor reality. Reality being Obama's albatross, not to mention our dross. Now for the piece sent to me, listen carefully. An ex-Navy SEAL at the end of his Fox News book tour interview thanked Fox News for keeping the Benghazi story in the news, as opposed to those other organizations who liberally call in liberal curfew on stories which don't properly skew their screwy views. He said the SEALs who died that night from State Department oversight deserved the public knowing the truth about the whole affair. Hence this poem, written by a Marine Corps officer, a poem entitled The Battling Boys of Benghazi. And I quote, "We're the battling boys of Benghazi. No fame, no glory, no paparazzi. Just a fiery death in a blazing hell, defending our country we loved so well. It wasn't our job, but we answered the call, fought to the consulate and scaled the wall. We pulled 20 countrymen from the jaws of fate, led them to safety and stood at the gate. Just the two of us and foes by the score, but we stood fast to bar the door. 3 calls for reinforcement, but all were denied. So we fought and we fought and we fought till we died. We gave our all for our Uncle Sam, but Barack Obama didn't give a damn. Just 2 SEALs who carried the load. No thanks to us, we were just bumps in the road." Unquote. Reflect on this reason for a timely rhyme, which stretches language to see to it that we are not to be politically begrimed by the campaign slime that merely pantomimes wartime in real time. Imagine the incompetence of our own people who literally sat there in the White House and watched the SEALs' execution on live streaming video and did zero. The administration obviously won't be held accountable because we apparently accept Hillary Clinton's petulant and repugnant statement. What difference does it make? I'll answer your question, Madam Secretary of State, by repeating your question, what difference does it make? And by reminding you and our audience of an apt observation made by George Bernard Shaw, who said, "I can do something with either love or hate because both are passions. However, I can do absolutely nothing with indifference, for indifference is the very essence of inhumanity." So to answer Hillary's State Department functionary's knee-jerk summary, the difference is your indifference, which is the essence of your inhumanity, vanity, insanity, and binary contempt for our national tenets of Judeo-Christianity. I choose not to be entirely ungallant to Mrs. Clinton, but as the next prospective occupant of the White House, I find the thought repellent, altogether an inelegant solution for a nation heading toward becoming irrelevant, and yes, to be sure, redundant. That Marine Corps officer who wrote the poem I just now cited reminded me of an inexcusable bumble by our president, spoken from a written speech, not an off-the-cuff mumble, by, you ready? By referencing the Marine Corps as the Marine Corps. How Freudian a slip is that presidential slippage. I trust if Hillary was there listening, she'd have given Obama a high-fi salute and added, so as not to remain mute, "Semper Fi, Mr. President. Continue to do nothing but speechify. Just you wait until I qualify as president." Yeah, and I here quickly add, but doing little else to modify. Just vilify and falsify in binary Clintonian modus operandi. So there you have a bump in the road, and what difference does it make? Remarks, landmark quotation marks, high water marks for political shocks, until America grows pitch dark, we dreaming of that long ago rampart. 'Tis plain to see that we could sure use yesteryear's fine arts of America's earlier engineers, instead of our fashionable mutineers, who cohere and adhere to their tin-eared thought, which is considered best, if not ever entirely crystal clear. These fashionable mutineers preferring the blear ahead through which to steer where angels would fear to change gears. Think once again about our earlier cited non-blighted schools as opposed to those of today's underruled whirlpools, cynically and deceptively called safe havens for learning. A craven phrase overturning meaning, making it cocksure departures into roughly shaven misadventures. Misadventures fully assured by naught but the immature and those unduly given lifetime tenure. Making friends of students they best tutor, but going ever farther in satisfying the fires of their pupils' amatory teenage desires and ardors. In very fact, recently, a teacher creature thought it meet, listen to this, to celebrate her pupil's birthday by giving the boy a lap dance. This is as far from yesteryear we've come, in quarrelsome, countless sums of secular progressive bums who'd claim to have the morals of, let me see, the morals of newly enlightened nuns in order to form their more perfect union of the numb and dumb. Ah, yes, when does free will lose its patentees? I'd say when it lacks the will of its own effigy. Good, misunderstood heavens. When did we become warm-leavened with empty pride, risen and readied to backslide? Victimhood become our clever livelihood. America become just kindling wood to warm permanent childhood, hoodwinked out of adult selfhood. It's the details, those little things which test the melody of our manner. For example, there's a left-wing zealot who's a communist come columnist for the New York Slime. Slime filled with sing-along Tommy-rot maggots. This sloppy sophist was being interviewed on TV where he sat, mind you, with his left shoe on his right knee. What now follows is a pet peeve which would have had me temporarily exiled as a juvenile. This one-track columnist, with his right hand, kept patting, no, massaging the very bottom of his left heel, as it lay on his knee, an area as dirty as his stuffed shirty. Got the picture? Bear with me, for there's more. When he would have time to time stop rubbing his shabby, genteel, dirty old heel, it would be to pick up with that same filthy paw his coffee cup from a side table stand, a mug to tug and to underjaw, setting it down after a sip, then back to his heel and spiel of leftist fellowship, spouting and pouting. I'll withhold his name, though I'm not particularly fond of roundabouting. Should we meet on the street and you ask for his name, I'll be less discreet. Another example of the melody of manna, poorly embodied, is our left-winged president. There are Googled pictures galore of the chief executive with his shoed feet on or rubbing against the White House furniture, each piece of historic manufacture in sad future need of manicure and improved posture. If I had as yesteryear's child behaved as said columnist and present president, I would have been turnstiled in the woodpile, and for a good while grounded an exiled juvenile. Feet on furniture indeed. You see, I was brought up and bred by loving but strict parents whose shtick was that their son was to become eclectic, kinetic, slightly maverick, a non-addict, and certainly not one of those afflicted, heel-petting adult derelicts, nor feet-on-furniture characters of egocentrics. Yep, it's the little slips that end seismic, Mr. President. Now, let me turn to what I believe is a quote fully worthy of note. It comes from the former premier of the Czech Republic, Václav Klaus. The danger to America, said the premier, is not Barack Obama, but a citizenry capable of entrusting a man like him with the presidency. It will be far easier to limit and undo the follies of an Obama presidency than to restore the necessary common sense and good judgment to a depraved electorate willing to have such a man for their president. The problem is much deeper and far more serious than Mr. Obama, who is a mere symptom of what ails America. Blaming the prince of the fools should not blind anyone to the vast confederacy of fools that made him their prince. The republic can survive a Barack Obama, who is, after all, merely a fool. It is less likely to survive a multitude of fools such as those who made him their president. And so said an ex-premier of the Czech Republic. Yes, sad to say, sadder and harder to confess, that we who politics profess are in one hell of a mess. Uprightness become leftist upside-downness, a confederacy of fools who poke around in darkness, helpless to witness the wilderness of their consummate wickedness. Yes, a depraved electorate is what we become, an electorate which accommodates second-ratedness, helpmates of under- and postgraduates. My yesteryears were filled with adversaries who sought our national transformation. They've never gone away in spite of our exceptionalism, our idealism, individualism, and distaste for the herdism of collectivism. After all, a confederacy of collected fools are easier, oh, ever so much easier, to rule unto our backs, becoming their footstools. In fact, as an example in form capsule, 2 Maryland lawmakers are trying to overturn a recently passed transgender rights bill, which they justly claim would allow men to walk freely into ladies' restrooms. Can you imagine the field day? Not only must Americans respect one another, they now are commanded to become one another. despite all my criticisms, I am still and yet certain that this our time out of joint, this our winter of our discontent, shall lose its adolescence, to arrive far more relevant, far more reluctant to be fervent for foment and inconsistent convergences, which mishmash a hodgepodge of jumble, pretending to be humble, but yet so to grumble. Yes, let us learn to use language and its internals, descriptive and prescriptive of logic, minus the ballywick of the psychopathic, pedagogic. Bring together, as does yours truly, to rhyme, to reason accordingly. Reason away treasons for all seasons, and rhyme again to find yesteryear's endless springtimes I remember in this episode of my Keepsakes. And so till next chime, signaling Carmine Arena's class time. Keep the faith in real time.
If you have any comments or other remarks, and that I perhaps could even read on some of these broadcasts, please do not hesitate to write to me, Carmine Arena, P.O. Box 1029, Larchmont, New York 10538.